Q Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuandReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUENDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The Herald, on Wednesday the 19th of June 2024. From the news section. New baby to troop of endangered monkeys born at Safari Park. This article was written by Jodie Harrison and read by me, Corey. Keepers have welcomed the birth of a baby macaque at a safari park. The number of endangered Barbary macaques have been reduced to only about 8,000 in the wild, but a troop is looked after at Blair Drummond Safari Park near Stirling as part of conservation efforts. The baby, named Hayley by keepers, was born on May 13th. Her parents, Orcus and Phil, are both dominant members of the park's troop, which arrived from Gibraltar in 2014. Keeper Caroline Booth says, Hayley is still very small, but already shows signs of being adventurous and confident with her keepers. Social status is extremely important within macaque groups. They live in highly structured hierarchies, often based on lineage to the dominant female. With both her parents being high up in the hierarchy, little Hayley should be in a comfortable position growing up. Unlike other macaque species, male Barbary macaques are active parents and play a significant role in rearing young. Visitors can often spot mum or dad snuggling Hayley in the macaque drive-through. The macaque area is one of the most popular areas of the park, allowing visitors to drive through the reserve and observe the animals up close. Blair Drummond Safari Park supports the Barbary Macaque Awareness and Conservation Project through their link to Wild Initiative fundraising to help wild macaques. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison and it was read by me, Corey. The Herald Scotland, on Wednesday the 19th of June 2024. From the news section. Scottish rewilding jobs sees boom since 2008. This article was written by Jodie Harrison and is being read by me, Corey. Rewilding in Scotland has created a more than 400% increase in jobs, research has found amid calls for it to continue. Research by Rewilding Britain shows 35 jobs have been created at one site alone in the Highlands since 2008. The research found that there has been a 412% increase in jobs at 13 major rewilding projects covering almost 60,000 acres, including sites owned or managed by charities, communities, private landowners and public bodies. First-time equivalent jobs across the sites increased from 24 before rewilding to 123 across sectors including hospitality, estate management, ecology, environmental monitoring, rewilding interventions, recreation and education. The largest recorded rise in jobs was at Trees for Life's 400-acre Dundregan estate near Loch Ness in the Highlands, a former deer stalking estate. Since 2008, some 35 jobs have been created in addition to the sole previous position, while volunteer numbers have risen from 0 to 100. A rewilding centre was opened at the site last year, and an open invitation has been extended to Hollywood star Leonardo DiCaprio to visit after he backed a campaign for Scotland to become the world's first rewilding nation. All the sites are more than 100 acres in size and are part of the rewilding network managed by Rewilding Britain. The research found combined volunteer numbers at the sites increased from 0 to 435. 5 new jobs were created at Tarras Valley Nature Reserve in Dumfries and Galloway, a 4,250 acre restoration project on Langholm Moor. The former Grouse Moor was bought with £6 million raised by the community between 2020 and 2022. The Scottish Government has been urged to commit to nature recovery across 30% of land by restoring habitats including peatlands, native woodlands, wetlands, rivers and seas, with no loss of productive farmland. Kevin Cummings, Rewilding Director at Rewilding Britain and Deputy Convener of the Scottish Rewilding Alliance, said, "These remarkable job creation figures show how rewilding can turbocharge social and economic benefits, while offering hope for revised biodiversity loss and tackling climate breakdown. This is yet another powerful illustration of why the Scottish Government should declare Scotland a rewilding nation. The opportunity is huge for jobs and local economies, better health, food production, access to fresh water and clean air." The Alliance's Rewilding National Charter, including representations from more than 20 organisations, has been signed by thousands of people since it launched in the spring. A Scottish Government spokesperson said, "Restoring Scotland's natural environment is a key way that we can help address the twin challenges of nature loss and climate change, including many of the interventions championed by the Scottish Rewilding Alliance. We welcome this evidence of employment in rural communities and will consider this research as we continue to work towards our commitment to protect and restore 30% of Scotland's land and seas for nature. Our £65 million Nature Restoration Fund has committed nearly £40 million since 2021 to unlock the full potential that nature restoration projects can bring to communities. The fund has supported local businesses, helped landowners with pollination projects to boost food production, and supported improved access to green spaces throughout Scotland, alongside restoration of our marine environment. The charter can be viewed at www.rewild, that's rewild.scot/charter, that's CHARTER. That article was from the Herald Scotland. It was from the news section. It was written by Jodie Harrison, and it was read by me, Corey.
From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 19th of June, from the sports section. Scotland fans finally get what they came to it for in Cologne. Report by Gabriel Mackay. As Red tells Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption, hope is a dangerous thing. Hope can kill a man. That's particularly true of Scotland's national football team, where heartbreak and disappointment is never far away. There's a lot of crawling through pipes of effluent and not a great deal of escaping to the Mexican sunshine. Still, hope remains alive. A draw with Switzerland in Cologne on Wednesday night means Steve Clarke's side can still progress with the right result against Hungary and a favourable set of results in other groups. Stuttgart need not be the end of the road. There was no wild celebration from the Tartan Army when the final whistle blew, but polite applause which said they believe the summer invasion may not be over in a few short days. A best third place finish could even bring a return to Cologne, where they've made themselves so at home. Game morning begins with a media invitation to Cologne Zoo to watch Hennessy Goat make a prediction about the score. A blue double-decker bus, sourced from Bristol in the 1960s, is the chosen method of conveyance and its ancient suspension jolts and jostles its occupants at the slightest hint of a bump. Quite why the 60-year-old British engineering has been chosen over famously world-leading German is unclear. A guide from the municipality talks through the sites with a refreshing honesty. He remarks upon the magnificent cathedral, recounts the city's proud music history, and explains when locals don't like a building they give it an unflattering name. That one over there is known as the trash bag, he says, gesturing across the Rhine. The old bus bounces past the train station. Unfortunately, some not very nice things happened here, says the guide, and one of the few buildings which survived the aerial bombardment by the Allies in World War II. The guide points out the roof where the swastikas have been painstakingly sanded off, leaving nothing but a trace which can be just about seen if you squint. As Scotland grapples with its own historic horrors, his frankness is refreshing. The subject of Turkey's win over Georgia arises, and he explains on a normal day the second most represented nationality in the city would be Turks. Of course, right now it's the Scottish. At the zoo, some fans and some local media have gathered to see Hennes make his prediction. After a fashion, he places a hoof in Scotland. A small cheer goes up. Perhaps it's a subconscious bias. Hennes is a mascot for FC Cologne, who used the tune to Loch Lomond for their most famous chant. Later, a guitarist will play it outside the cathedral, a man in Cologne shirt telling him it gives him goosebumps. There can, at times, be a rather twee was-like-as quality to the perceptions and indeed self-mythology of the Tartan army, but it really does bear repeating that despite the huge numbers in both Munich and Cologne, there's been barely a hint of trouble. Today the streets of the city are filled with Swiss and Scots mixing together, cowbells and bagpipes combining for a symphony which is easier on the eye than the ear. No Scotland, no party, smells one of the volunteers in the media centre. You are doing so well. We hope you finish third and can come back to Cologne. We would love it. One local paper, Cornerstad Anzeiger, adds, for days now, the Scottish fans have been delighting us with their good mood and party spirit. Another, Cornish's Rundschau, notes Riley, the desire for coffee is limited. That good nature is put to a stern test when it's time for supporters to make their way to the official fan march. It's to leave from Technology Park, 10 minutes away from the central station and the S12 line, but not for the first time. Deutsche Bahn leaves a lot to be desired. At around 5 PM, a sign outside the station announces that it is closed for a short time. Unsurprisingly, this causes large queues to form at the entrance, so when it does reopen, people will have to enter in staggered groups. The departures board shows a plethora of delays, not just in the direction of the stadium, and supporters stand, cramped for their chance to be given access to the platform. It's hot, it's crowded, and it's not a little unnerving, but aside from the choice language, the worst we get from the Tartan army is an ironic chant of, "Are you ScotRail in disguise?" Things could have gone in an altogether different direction. As for antagonising the opposition, the extent is a reworking of the ubiquitous John McGinn song. You've got fondue, we've got iron brew. I just don't think you understand. You're going home with your Toblerone. Such is the scale of Scottish influx, not to mention a short journey for the Swiss and the fact Germany are playing 3 hours beforehand. There are no fewer than 3 fan zones in the city. One in a centre at Neumarkt, one across the Rhine at Tanzbrunnen, and a third specifically for Scotland fans at Konrad Adenauer Ufer. The sun is setting in the first of these locations, its red glow shining back off the Great St Martin Church. Footballs are bounced around, one is booed when it lands irretrievably in the roof of a pizza truck. Loch Lomond is sung, the national anthem is booming. All good stuff, but we've been here before. This isn't what we came for. Then, suddenly, 13 minutes in, it is. Callum McGregor is released down the left and bursts into space. He stops. He stumbles over his own feet. The Tartan army groans. He recovers. He stabs it back to Scott McTominay, who shot his block, but the net ripples. There's a nanosecond of incomprehension, the ball seeming to have defied the laws of physics. It's come off Fabian Schär. It's in the back of the net. The long-awaited release turns the small plats into chaos, arms and pints flying, flares igniting, no Scotland, no party indeed. If nothing else, we'll always have that massive deflection. It lasts just 13 minutes. A Grant Hanley pass puts Billy Gilmore under pressure and he pokes it to Anthony Ralston. The Celtic defender is third choice at best in his right wing back berth. He's willing, but he's in the wrong movie. He passes it straight to the feet of the diminutive, barrel-chested Xherdan Shaqiri, formerly of Bayern Munich, Inter, Liverpool. He's lost a step. He's playing in MLS now and not even particularly well, but while he may be small in stature, spiritually he's a bigger boy. He doesn't even break stride, just wraps his left foot around it and sends it spinning venomously into the top corner. You half expect him to turn to Ralston and say, "Welcome to the party, pal," like Bruce Willis in Die Hard. The Swiss have a second goal disallowed for offside. Gunn parries well to keep another out. Half time is a blessing. Improvement is not instant. The Swiss look threatening once again and Kieran Tierney is carried off injured on the hour mark. A brilliant player, he's sadly incapable of staying fit for any length of time. The Tartan army groan as the replay shows a hamstring or knee pop and a heft impact with the turf. Slowly but surely, though Scotland grow into the game. McTominay is filled on the edge of the box. He could have been killed, one fan jokes. And Andy Robertson's free kick causes chaos in the box before it's somehow scrambled away. It's McTominay who's at the heart of it again when his volley is blocked in the box. It looks goal-bound and 2,000 Scots scream for handball, in hope more than expectation. As the end approaches, it's Scotland who are exerting the greater pressure, though there's a heart-stopping moment when the Swiss have another ruled out for offside. When the end finally does come, it's a mixture of relief and frustration, but we're not going home just yet. What's needed in Stuttgart will become apparent in the coming days, but it will certainly involve beating the Hungarians. Germany's sixth largest city braces for the tartan takeover, the Magyar nation for some gentle ribbing of national treasures. Chips in your goulash. We're putting chips in your goulash. And that piece was written by Gabriel Mackay.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 19th of June 2024 from the Voices section. It's easy going all the way for Labour. Ask yourself why. This article is by Alison Rowett. It's going to be a squeeze on those green benches. Maybe they will have to come and go in shifts or put beach towels down to grab their spot. With polls predicting a majority bigger than Blair's and mightier than Attlee's, the Commons authorities will have a job on their hands accommodating the legions of Labour MPs heading their way. In fact, the Commons will have the same number of MPs as before, 650, but the makeup will be different. The chamber will be a sea of red with a sprinkling of blue, orange and yellow, some dots of green, and whatever colour Nigel Farage plumps for. Gammon pink? No wonder Labour tails are up. You could see it at the Scottish Labour's manifesto launch yesterday. Happy campers everywhere. That's not supposed to happen. Scottish leader Anas Sarwar was so up for the fight he launched his campaign for Holyrood in 2026 while he was at it. There's confidence for you. Without wishing to do a rishi on anyone's parade, one might wonder whether Labour is having too easy a time of it in this election. Should their path to power be quite so free of obstacles as seems to be the case? Despite constant pleas from the leadership not to take anything for granted, the lads and lassies just can't help themselves sometimes. Why should they, when even a senior Tory concedes the fight is all over bar the shouting, and it is now just a question of limiting the damage? For Grant Shapps, whose transition from Tigger to Eeyore has been dizzyingly swift, the majority thing now is to deprive Labour of a supermajority. Don't give them too big a majority or they'll get too big for their boots. The country doesn't function well when you get majorities the size of Blair's or even bigger, Shapps warned this week. Concede defeat with weeks to go, that'll show them. Ruth Davidson has joined in the bizarre rallying call, urging voters in Scotland not to punish the Tories by voting SNP. Let's be honest, writes the former leader of the Scottish Conservatives. I know a lot of people are unhappy at the state of politics, not just in Scotland but across the UK as a whole, and frankly, I'm one of them. But you need to ask yourself, how would any of that be helped by electing more SNP MPs? It may not change anything, but my goodness, it would make a lot of people very happy to see the Conservatives take a drubbing. Others are hoping a similar fate awaits the SNP elsewhere in the country. Taking pleasure in another's misfortunes. There ought to be a word for that, something German maybe. Whatever you call it, the noble Baroness is not above indulging. She will be watching Nicola Sturgeon play pundit on ITV's election night programme to see her face as she realises her push for independence is finished. Steady on, Ruth. No need to bring the tank out. It is good for democracy to have a clear out now and then, and there is little the governing party can do about that. Call it Callaghan's Law, after what the former Labour Prime Minister told an aide in 1979 shortly before losing to Margaret Thatcher. There are times, perhaps once every 30 years, said Callaghan, when there is a sea change in politics. It then does not matter what you say or what you do. There is a shift in what the public wants and what it approves of. I suspect there is now such a sea change, and it is for Mrs. Thatcher. Labour supporters would laugh bitterly at any notion the party has had it too easy in this campaign. Never has happened, never will, they would say. Old hands will tell you that even in 1997, on the eve of Blair's victory, it was by no means certain the party would win. Labour had been caught out before, in 1992, and it was not going to be fooled again. Next time, it would be a lean, mean election fighting machine, forged in the fires of past battles with the Tories and the media. Labour has used the same playbook as Blair's New Labour, but neither Sir Keir nor the party has been put through the mill to the same extent. They just haven't. Starmer likes to talk about how much Labour has changed since the bad old days of Jeremy Corbyn. He is not so keen to talk about his own leap from Corbyn Alley to enemy. When picked up on this by Beth Rigby in the Sky News debate, Starmer looked the most uncomfortable I had ever seen him. The moments when an interviewer has genuinely given him a hard time are few and far between. There have been skirmishes over tax, but after the umpteenth denial, even the doughiest of interviewers will give up. It is Callaghan's Law at work again. Voters want a lot of things from an election, but first and foremost, they want to blow a collective raspberry in the face of whatever lot was in power, or, in the SNP's case, is in power. But a win is a win. Does it matter how it was achieved? It does if the party fails to deliver on expectations. Labour has played a canny hand here. It has fought a campaign built on the desire for change, but at the same time, its message to voters is, fear not, things won't change. Taxes won't go up. There won't be a splurge on spending. There will be no chaos here, thank you very much. Yet a party cannot behave in government the way it acts in opposition. Choices must be made. Promises, however vague, need to be fulfilled. Otherwise, voters will start to wonder why they bothered. There was one change Starmer could have signed up for, but has not, scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. It is what Scottish Labour wants, what Gordon Brown wants, what many of those hoping to become Labour MPs want. It would have been a clear expression of intent, but Starmer won't commit. The subject will no doubt come up in question time this Thursday. 4 party leaders, Sunak, Starmer, Swinney and Ed Davey, will be asked questions by a studio audience. It will be a tricky night. As Kate Forbes learned recently, question time audiences have limited patience with politicians who won't answer the question. Sir Keir could be in for his toughest test yet. That article was by Alison Rowett.
This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 20th of June, from the news section. Jimmy Savile's Glencoe cottage to be demolished. This article is written by Caroline Wilson. A derelict Highland cottage that once belonged to Jimmy Savile is to be demolished after redevelopment plans were approved. Revised proposals for a new 4-bedroom home at Altnaray in Glencoe have been given the green light by Highland Council. The paedophile television presenter lived in the cottage from 1998 until his death in 2011. Plans submitted in 2021 sparked protest from objectors who said the property did not fit in with a spectacular mountainous landscape. It was also previously owned by celebrated mountaineer Hamish McInnes, who invented ice axes and a stretcher used by mountaineering teams all over the world. An outbuilding where he worked on his creations will be redeveloped and named Hamish House in his honour. The new owners are a family of Harris Aslam, owner of the Kirkcaldy-based convenience stores business Greens Retail Limited, who said their intent was to create a property that the community can be proud of. The design has been amended to reduce the height of the building to ensure a lower key appearance in the landscape, while providing a modern and increased accommodation. The single-storey main house will be demolished and replaced with a 1.5-floor house with a 2-storey rear section. The 2 buildings will be linked by a single-storey section with a glass grass roof. The planning application states, although the replacement house is larger than the building it replaces, the mass of the building is well broken down into different sections, and the form and proportions are an acceptable modern interpretation of a more traditional house. The outbuilding will be redeveloped to provide an ancillary accommodation and will retain some of the white walls. There were no objections to the new proposals from Glencoe and Glenateeve Community Council, which requested that action be taken as soon as possible to demolish the existing building, which has been repeatedly vandalised. Nature Scott said the natural heritage, which is of international importance, would not be adversely affected. Mountaineering Scotland had previously said it will object until the images of the proposal from key viewpoints are available, saying that it is one of Scotland's more iconic views. The planning document notes that there are very positive local associations to the property, relating to the respected mountaineer who once owned the property. After Savile's death in 2011, the 2-bedroom bungalow was put up for auction and was bought for £212,000 by a buyer who intended to live there before it was sold to the Aslam family. Savile first saw the cottage on a cycling holiday in 1944 and once entertained Prince Charles, now the King, over dinner there. It was featured in the Louis Theroux's documentary When Louis Met Jimmy. That article was written by Caroline Wilson. This is from the Herald Scotland on Thursday the 20th of June from the news section. Latest election poll analysis. Battle for Scotland, too close to call. This article is written by Rachel Ormston and Chris Martin. A little more than 2 weeks out from the general election, the Labour Party has increased its list of Scottish target seats to 36, in a sign of growing confidence about its prospects north of the border. While Scotland polling data has indicated the wind blowing in Labour's favour for some time now, a new MRP model from Ipsos highlights the degree of uncertainty that remains in Scotland, and how far relatively small shifts in votes could yet change the outcome here. Estimating the number of seats from opinion polls has become something of a sport for political geeks, even though most conventional polls are not designed to estimate this. Rather, they are a snapshot of how the share of the vote might fall, were the election held today. Of course, where those votes fall is crucial to how they translate into seats, particularly in a first-past-the-post system, as used in general elections in the UK. The Liberal Democrats are acutely aware of this. In 2019, they won 11.6% of the vote UK-wide, but just 11 seats, under 2% of the total number. Recent elections have seen more voting intention polls than ever, but also increasing use of statistical technique, multiple regression and post-stratification, or MRP, to estimate the share of the vote in each constituency. Simply put, MRP involves taking a very large poll of voting intentions, typically 10,000 plus, and using it to analyse how different types of people in different types of seat say they will vote. For example, it estimates the probability that a woman aged 25 to 34, educated to degree level, living in an SNP Labour marginal seat, who voted SNP in 2019, will vote for each party running in that constituency. The model creates thousands of these estimates and then applies them to the demographic profiles of each constituency, based on data from, for example, the census, to estimate how the votes might fall out for each party. Ipsos has this week released its new MRP model for the UK, uniquely based on data from its online random probability knowledge panel. At the overall UK level, the picture is bleak for the Conservatives, who are estimated to be on course for just 115 seats. Labour, meanwhile, would take as many as 450 seats, even higher than its tally of 418 in 1997. However, MRP models, as with any poll, come with a degree of uncertainty attached. 117 seats have a winning margin in the estimates of less than 5 percentage points, and are therefore considered too close to call. The Conservatives are second in 50 of these, and Labour in 43, so the overall balance between the Conservatives and Labour could be narrower, or even wider than the headline figures indicate. This uncertainty is even more apparent in the Scotland data. While the SNP are only a little behind Labour on overall vote share, the distribution of votes across constituencies in our MRP model indicates that this may translate into 34 seats for Labour, 15 seats for the SNP, 3 for the Conservatives and 5 for the Liberal Democrats. The implied vote share from our knowledge panel data puts the Labour on 36%, the SNP on 33%, the Conservatives on 13%, the Liberal Democrats on 8%, Reform UK on 5%, and Greens on 3%. On these figures, the SNP could be set to lose 29 of their notional 2019 seats to Labour and 3 to the Liberal Democrats. And in Aberdeenshire North and Moray East, the subject of much controversy after Douglas Ross announced he would stand, the Scottish Conservatives having taken the decision that David Dogood, the sitting MP, was too ill to stand, against Mr Dogood's own assessment, the Conservatives looked set to lose out to the SNP. Just hours after our MRP model was published, the electoral landscape in that seat has changed yet again, with the withdrawal of Labour Party support for its candidate. This may or may not benefit Mr Ross, depending on whether voters in the seat who had been planning on supporting Labour to switch to the Conservatives or to the SNP. However, 12 of the 57 seats in Scotland are too close to call in our MRP model. This includes 3 SNP Conservative battlegrounds, Gordon and Buchan, Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirk, and Clydesdale and Tweedale, seats to watch as the results come in overnight on the 4th. A further 14 seats lean towards one party or another, but the gap is still relatively modest, between 5 and 10 percentage points. Add to this the fact that our Scotland telephone poll last week showed that as many as 42% of voters may change their minds ahead of the election day, and the picture could yet look quite different come July the 5th. So, while overall the story from our MRP, as in the polls overall, is positive for Labour, worrying for the SNP, and pretty bleak for the Conservatives, it also shows that the battle for Scottish votes is far from over. That article was written by Rachel Ormston and Chris Martin, who are research directors at Ipsos Scotland.
The Herald on the 21st of June and the Voices section. Boris Johnson is back with Someone Please Shoot That Effing Dog by Alison Rowett. One is a slave to his romantic urges, leaves a mess wherever he likes and generally causes havoc from the moment he wakes. The other is Dylan, Boris Johnson's Jack Russell Cross, and one fancies the inspiration for the title of Unleashed, the former Prime Minister's memoir. HarperCollins has announced a publication date of October 10 for what it calls an honest, unrestrained and deeply revealing book by the politician who has dominated our times. The man himself said he's honoured HarperCollins is unleashing my personal account of the huge realignment that took place in UK politics in the last 15 years. So the manufacture of humongous amounts of bull order begins, because realigning UK politics is what Johnson will be remembered for, right? Not trashing the economy through Brexit, not proroguing Parliament, not being the first serving Prime Minister to be fined for breaking the law, not lying to the Commons, not mismanaging the response to COVID at the cost of countless lives. Dear me, no, it's the realignment of UK politics that's on everyone's lips whenever that mop top of Johnson's hoves into view. The hair features prominently in the publicity photo issued by HarperCollins. It is a triumph of tastelessness. Johnson's face is in total shadow with Unleashed 10-10-24 across his chest, mugshot style. One observer said it looked like the honey monster had been placed in witness protection. Another thought it was an ad for Netflix's latest serial killer biopic. There's no mention of how much HarperCollins is paying Johnson. Some literary agents have put his fee at north of £1 million. That is mere petty cash to what he earns from speeches in a newspaper column. This is about investment in the future. Play this right and Brand Boris could give Brand Beckham a run for his money. Aftershave, clothes, cars. Not underpants, obviously. Think of the billboards. But otherwise the sky's the limit. The barrel is crying out to be scraped. Writing one's memoir is a long and fairly noble tradition amongst past prime ministers. Even Liz Truss squeezed a book out of her time in office, despite being there for about as long as it takes to read Mr. Men. A memoir is a nice little top-up to the pension, and chance for leaders to have their say. Prime Ministers spend their days in office being assailed by criticism, with only the vast reserves of the state and paid for special advisers to protect them. They need to get in early with their excuses. Never underestimate the desire for revenge, either. Will Johnson use Unleashed to settle scores with those he believes to have wronged him? One of those on the list is Rishi Sunak, currently leading this party into the kind of pacing last all-out to John Major's Tories. It was Sunak's resignation as Chancellor, together with that of Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary that landed a double whammy on Johnson's premiership. At the start of last week, it was reported that Johnson, who had been on holiday in Sardinia, was to be parachuted into the Conservatives' campaign to save as many souls as he could from Reform UK. Sunak put a brave face on this, praising his former colleague and wishing him happy birthday. Johnson turned 60 on June 19, but not everyone was pleased at the prospect of Johnson visiting their patches. Some gave the impression they would rather have a plague of locusts descend than Boris visit. Johnson was told his services were no longer needed, and he could set off on another holiday destination as yet unknown. It turned out that the MPs he planned to visit just so happened to be likely Boris' supporters in any future leadership contest. As had often been the case with Johnson, there was a method behind the apparent mayhem. Far from being someone who bumbled into politics and found himself in the top job by accident, Johnson has been one of the most calculating politicians of his generation. As a boy, he famously wanted to be world king. What came after, Oxford, journalism, running for London mayor, becoming an MP, was carefully chosen to get him where he wanted to be. The same kind of careful planning will have gone into Unleashed, starting with that title. It meant to tickle the tummies of the dog-crazy British, to make them forget about the reality of life under Johnson. Do not think of him as a snarling XL bully that prorogued Parliament. He's just a big daft Labrador crashing into the cake stall at the village fete, or whatever full Woodhouse fantasy is at work in Johnson's head that day. It's only surprising that he's not enlisted Dylan for the publicity photo. The dog has often been by Johnson's side when he needs some positive PR. Mind you, Dylan has not always been good press. After the rescued dog arrived at the home of the new owners Carrie and Boris, reports emerged of the untrained pup running amok. One story had Johnson shouting, "Someone please shoot that effing dog." But by and large, Johnson employed the dog as his partner in comedy. As many told Daily Mail readers that Dylan had killed one of the Queen's goslings in Buckingham Palace Gardens. Johnson had been given permission to walk his dog on the grounds if the Queen was away. I will let Johnson take up the tale. We were trundling along when there was a sharp tug on the flexi lead. Because I had not been expecting it, the handle popped from my hand, and pow! That dog was off like a bullet, he wrote. I watched in impotent horror as he was consumed by his biological destiny, transformed by an ancient terrier genes from a harmless pooch to a lethal missile of fur, fang and nail. Within seconds it was all over. There was nothing I could do. Nothing he could do. Unexpected occurrences. Helpless to intervene. Does he ever listen to the tin-eared nonsense he spouts? And what's amusing about the killing of a creature? Anyone else would have been shamed into silence. Not Johnson. Who knows if any similar stories will find their way into Unleashed, and to what ultimate end? Flog a book, exact revenge, mount yet another comeback? Johnson is not the type to let sleeping mutts or his ambition lie for long. And that was by Alison Rowett.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 24th of June, from the news section. Dundee woman fined £1,400 after admitting eBay ivory sales. Report by Craig Williams. A woman has been fined £1,400 after she admitted making thousands of pounds from selling elephant ivory on eBay. Joyce Bell, 67, sold about 100 items made with ivory from elephant tusks on the online auction site over a number of years, making a total of £6,412. When she was arrested in December 2022, she initially claimed that items were costume jewellery and other goods made from bovine bone, and that she had not been selling them for profit. However, in May 2024, she pleaded guilty to the sale of ivory in 2022 in breach of the Ivory Act, which came into force the same year. This is understood to be the first conviction in Scotland under the Ivory Act, which brought in a near-total ban on the import, export and dealing of items containing elephant ivory. She also admitted fraudulently evading export duties by failing to obtain export licences for goods being shipped overseas. At Dundee Sheriff Court on Monday, Sheriff George Way acknowledged it was Bell's first offence and that she seemed to be genuinely remorseful for her actions. He also said she didn't quite realise the implications of the trade in ivory. It has many other ramifications, but what might not always be obvious when dealing in bits and pieces. He added, "At the end of the day, the trade in these items is generated by money. If they weren't valuable to some people, then there wouldn't be the illegal trade, and there wouldn't be the poaching and the horrible things we know about." He ordered Bell, who is from Dundee, to pay £1,400 fine, plus tax and a victim surcharge of £75. Bell, dressed in a white blouse, showed no reaction as the sentence was handed down. At the previous hearing in May, prosecutor Karen Rollo explained that Bell first came to the attention of the authorities in March 2022, when Border Force staff at Heathrow Airport became suspicious that packages she was sending to China contained elephant ivory. She was arrested in December 2022, following an investigation by the National Wildlife Crime Unit, which found she had used multiple eBay accounts to sell her items. Ms. Rollo told the court that when advertising the items, Bell photographed them with a set of scales, which would have told collectors that the items were ivory, rather than bovine bone, as ivory is much heavier. She also said that following her arrest, Bell admitted receiving letters from customs advising her she needed to export licenses for the packages she was sending overseas, but that she had ignored them. The prices she was recording on the packages she was sending were also found to be far lower than what the goods had actually sold for. Bell was fined £1,400 after pleading guilty to offences under the Customs and Excise Management Act 1979 and Ivory Act 2018. And that report was written by Craig Williams and read by me, Ian McKenna.
This article is from the Herald on Thursday the 20th of June 2024. It is in the Voices section and the headline is, "Here's the one thing stopping me dumping the SNP and voting Labour." The report is by Neil Mackay. Last week, I wrote about how, as a moderate independence supporter, I'm struggling to vote SNP. The column prompted an intelligent debate on Herald's letters pages and a distinctly unintelligent, downright ugly furore on social media. Bluntly, my position is this: the SNP is useless in government. While certainly the manic, dangerous Tory government has exacerbated Scotland's woes, the SNP has done little to mitigate problems and often made matters worse. As witness for the prosecution, I bring forward the huge cut to affordable housing when there's 10,000 children homeless. Next for the prosecution, the ScotWind deal, which saw Nicola Sturgeon flog national assets like an avowed Thatcherite. The SNP whines, blames and divides. It pretends to be socially liberal while stocked to the gunnels with social conservatives. It uses the bait of independence as a long con, keeping the gullible on side when there's no plan for independence. So, I'm basically done with the party, and now considering whether to vote Labour for the first time since 2003. The Iraq War was the final straw for me as a once lifelong Labour supporter. What keeps the possibility of me voting SNP alive is my local MP, Chris Stevens, a good, decent politician, not many of them around, as far as I can see. Indeed, he reached out to me in friendly fashion after last week's article, offering to make the case for why I should vote SNP. I respect that. What I didn't respect was the abuse I was subjected to online from SNP supporters for daring to question the party. Not only is that cultishness part of the reason I'm so sick of the SNP, but it's hardly a great tactic to hurl insults at someone who has voted for your party and might again. Ever considered that? However, the worst attacks came from Alba party members. A yes voter contemplating backing Labour seems tantamount to heresy for this coterie of cranks. One prominent Alba member told me to go home to Ulster. I'm from Northern Ireland. Nice work on the bigotry there, Alba. Yet, when it comes to Labour, I know zero about my local candidate in Glasgow South West, Dr. Zubair Ahmed. I've received no campaign literature. I visited his website, but it tells me next to nothing about his beliefs. That vagueness, that depth of vision, is key. Keir Starmer may think that by promising as little as possible, his Ming Vaz theory of campaigning will hold up until polling day, that he won't drop a clanger and blow the election. How many times has Starmer U-turned on promises which offer real vision because he cravenly fears the Tory press? For me, that's not good enough. I want to vote for values, not PR. My major stumbling block is Labour's refusal to reverse the hateful two-child benefit cap. This prevents parents from claiming benefits for more than 2 children. It's one of the greatest drivers of child poverty. Ending it would lift 250,000 children out of poverty. Labour's refusal to commit to ending this vindictive, sadistic policy sickens me. I won't mark an X on a ballot for a party which claims it wants to end child poverty whilst allowing this affront to continue. The claim is, in fact, a lie. Anas Sarwar was banging on about the party's anti-child poverty strategy this week. How can he call it a strategy if its boss retains the 2-child cap? There's no strategy, just empty rhetoric. At least the SNP created the Scottish Child Payment, one of its few good policy decisions. Today, children are getting shorter and sicker due to austerity. In other words, making children suffer is a choice politicians are happy to make. The Food Foundation found that the average height of 5-year-olds is falling. Doesn't that enrage you? How can any politician read that fact and not exert every muscle to improve the lives of children? Believe me, I'm looking for reasons to vote Labour. I want the Tories gone, indeed destroyed, and Labour will do that, not the SNP. But how can I vote for a party which will just mimic in soft focus the policies of the government it defeated? Labour claims it offers change. Well then, really change this country. Overturn every ill the Tories visited on Britain. Dismantle austerity. Protect children. Help the poor. I want to believe Starmer is playing possum here, that he's being Tory light in order to win power, and when in office he'll be more radical, but I doubt it. There's an appalling video online of Starmer confronted by the child of 2 working parents. She tells him she sleeps in a onesie as her family can't afford heating. Starmer laughs and starts talking about how his son used to wear onesies. A child is telling you about the poverty she's enduring, sir, so listen to her. Respond with compassion. Rachel Reeves proudly tells banking bosses their fingerprints are all over Labour's manifesto. Why are the fingerprints of the poor not all over the manifesto also? Simply getting the Conservatives out isn't good enough. I won't vote for a party which promises similar shameful policies just with a smile rather than a sneer. If Labour merely apes the Tories in some watered-down form, then Britain is on dangerous ground. Poverty will deepen and eventually voters will tire of Labour and turn to the right again. With the Tories imploding, it'll be Nigel Farage waiting to provide the alternative. And I won't help Labour pave a path to hell, either for poor children or Britain as a whole. So my vote remains in play. The SNP can still win me back. Contrition for the failures in government and a vow, signed in blood preferably, to pass good laws which help the poor would see me return, possibly. I'm set to meet my local SNP MP soon to talk matters over. If I look Chris Stevens in the eye and believe what he says, then I know where my ex is going. I've the feeling Labour doesn't care to make its case to voters like me, and that says it all really, and helps me make up my mind. That report was by Neil Mackay. This article is from the Herald on Thursday the 20th of June 2024. It is in the Voices section and the headline is, "Are all our politicians born liars?" The report is by Rebecca McQuillan. Politicians are not my favourite people, an old friend of mine told me a few days ago. She said it politely, almost apologetically, knowing that I'm a political obsessive. But underlying her words was cold contempt towards parliamentarians. Translation, they're all liars. Are they? Do all politicians routinely lie? I would contest that. Some certainly do, Boris Johnson for instance, but most are more like Alan Clark once put it, economical with the actuality. That doesn't make them monsters or sociopaths. It's a very human trait to put the best spin on your own actions and intentions, but when it goes too far, as it often does in politics, objective truth is the casualty. Inconvenient facts are quietly suppressed. The result is an untrustworthy mashup of aspiration and misrepresentation that's fed to the electorate as promises. In this election, it feels as if we've all taken a holiday from reality. First, we had the Tories, who are promising £17 billion of tax cuts while improving public services. You're having a laugh. Then we had Labour, who plan magically to turbocharge growth to avoid spending cuts arising from a financial black hole in their plans. Pull the other one. And now we have the SNP. At the party's manifesto launch yesterday, John Swinney said a vote for the SNP was a vote for independence, and that an independent Scotland would have a richly funded and staffed NHS with no public spending cuts, contrary to every credible analysis of Scotland's post-independence finances. This, while he attacked Labour over and over for failing to come clean about impending cuts. He argued that spending shortfalls in Scotland were really Westminster's fault, knowing full well that it will never be him and his party that have to make the maths work at the Treasury. Do they think we're daft? Politicians always behave like this, you might well say. True, but this is not just any election. Right now, the country is facing multiple epoch-defining challenges. Seemingly intractable inequality that's feeding political polarisation, climate change, the rise of new superpowers, divisive identity politics at home, and dictatorship abroad. There are dangerous currents in the black water around us. Given all that, the state of the debate feels desperately inadequate. It makes you fear for democratic politics. Trust in government and politicians is as low as it has ever been, according to Sir John Curtis, fuelled by wrongdoing like Partygate and above all by Brexit, the greatest mis-selling scandal in living memory. Nearly 6 in 10 voters almost never trust politicians to tell the truth when in a tight corner, and nearly half would think hell had frozen over if a politician put country before party. If you listened to Mr. Swinney yesterday, time in government, 16 years, all that is other people's fault. People were crying out for principled leadership, he said. The Scottish Government had been treated with rank disrespect by Westminster in the last 5 years, he said. Well, this may well be true. The government of Boris Johnson ushered in an era of boneheaded muscular unionism, but it hardly happened in a vacuum. The SNP have always been enthusiastic sparring partners of the Conservatives, always eager to push the fabricated notion that devolution is broken while simultaneously posing as its defender. Never during waking hours has an SNP politician missed an opportunity to proclaim grievances against the UK government, both real and imagined. It's a cynical game, all right. Mr. Swinney has scored some hits during this campaign, including in calling out Labour's cowed silence over Brexit. He knows full well that it's much harder for them, needing votes in red wall seats, to get rid of the Tories than for him, in a country that voted 2-1 against leaving the EU, but he was right to raise it. The 2019 election was all about Brexit. 5 years on, it's the debacle that dare not speak its name. He did an effective job of highlighting Labour's lack of ambition. "Where's the change?" is a powerful rhetorical device. He highlighted Scottish Government spending on key priorities like the NHS, saying that the Scottish Government had hiked doctors' pay and arguing that Labour could replicate that at UK level, unlocking more cash for Scotland's NHS through Barnett consequentials. It was a decent line, building on the SNP's choices in government to put forward a concrete suggestion. And he attacked Labour over the indefensible two-child benefit limit. Again, the Scottish Government's own major investment in the Scottish Child Payment gives the SNP leader moral authority. But mostly, you're left with the feeling that things don't really add up. It's the same with all the parties. The sidestepped questions, the failures that are skated over, the numbers that don't convince. Always there's the knowledge that no one is being entirely honest. Being honest seems to be the hardest thing. Is that why Labour haven't said they'll abolish the totemic two-child benefit cap, even though it's a horrible policy that pushes children into poverty? It is indeed strange they haven't made that pledge. Why have they not? It's not because they don't hate it. Clearly they do. But probably because they fear opening up a flank to the Tories and being attacked as financially profligate. So instead, they seem to be communicating their intentions in code. They will have an ambitious child poverty strategy, they say, nod, nod, wink, wink, which child poverty experts say would be inconceivable alongside a retained two-child limit. So, when the strategy comes in, the two-child limit will almost certainly go. Just consider that for a moment. So terrified is Labour of being misrepresented as Corbynesque that they would rather give the impression that they are callous about child poverty than make themselves vulnerable on it during the campaign. They are perhaps relying on voters assuming that whatever Labour say, they will spend more when it comes down to it. It's not exactly open and honest, is it? It certainly doesn't say much for the health of our democracy. We have 2 more weeks of this. It can't end soon enough. That report was by Rebecca McQuillan. These letters are from the Herald on Thursday the 20th of June 2024, to be found in the Voices section. The headline of the first letter: "Sorry SNP, but we cannot be independent if we're in the EU." I received the election leaflet from Robert Leslie, the SNP candidate for Orkney and Shetland, through the post today. At number 6 in his front page wish list is "Rejoin the EU." I do not want to be in a political union, the European Union. That is why I voted Leave in 2016. The EU is a political project that looks to incorporate all nation states into that union, with all the nations being subservient to the EU. A definition of sovereignty should help. That is the authority of a state to govern itself and determine its own laws. Countries in the EU can pass any law they want, but EU law on the same issue takes precedence. One concern is that if Scotland does become independent, it appears that the SNP thinks that it can just rejoin the EU without asking voters for permission in a referendum about whether they want to be in the EU or not. The SNP and other members of the EU Supporters Club should pay more attention to what is actually happening in the EU. Utopia it is not. The voters in the EU are revolting. Farming protests have been taking place all over the EU this year. This is because of the EU Green Deal, which remarkably is aiming to make the production of food and meat, at best, awkward. The Farmers' Party in the Netherlands has won seats in Senate and in EU elections due to public unease over the implications of the Green Deal. The unelected head of the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, has suggested the need for an EU-wide digital ID that any citizen can use anywhere in Europe to do anything from paying your taxes to renting a bicycle. Oh, and handy for keeping track of what citizens are up to as well. Scotland is not independent in the UK. An independent Scotland cannot be independent in the EU. Scotland can be independent, or it can be in either union. Brian Nugent, Bura, Shetland. Definition, please. I wonder if one of your better educated readers could help me. Is manifesto the Latin for a load of mince? Michael Watson, Glasgow.
The Herald on the 25th of June, and the news section, Scotland Euro 2024 adventure draws German visitor fan base, by Craig Williams. While Scotland's Euro 2024 journey may have come to an end, the nation itself has attracted a new fan base in the form of German holidaygoers. New insights from Visit Scotland have revealed traffic from Germany to its customer website, visitscotland.com, almost doubled during Scotland's tournament dates, 13 to 23 June 2024, an increase of plus 83% compared to the same period last year. Friday, June 14, the day of Scotland's opening game against host Germany, saw the highest number of German users of the year so far. This increase in interest will be seen as an encouraging sign by Scotland's tourism industry, with German visitors making 343,000 visits and spending £247 million last year. Research from the National Tourism Organisation shows German visitors, who are more likely to travel throughout the year and different parts of the country, visit Scotland for its scenery and landscapes, history and culture and people. An estimated 200,000 Scottish football fans are believed to have travelled to Germany to support the national team. Images of the Tartan Army enjoying their first away tournament since 1998 have attracted global media coverage. Just this weekend, Scotland fans were voted best supporters by German news channel RTL. Meanwhile, SFA's chief executive Ian Maxwell praised fans for the positive image of Scotland they have shared around the world. Malcolm Roughhead, Visit Scotland chief executive, said, "We couldn't agree more that the Tartan Army have not just been a great support to our national team, but also fantastic ambassadors for Scotland. It's been incredible to see the scenes of Scotland fans displaying that famous Scottish welcome and earning such praise from the German supporters." Since the start of Euro 24, we've noticed an increase in traffic to our website from Germany, with visits almost doubling compared to this time last year. Germany is one of our key overseas markets, attracting 343,000 visits and £247 million spent last year. Our research shows that German visitors choose Scotland for its scenery and landscapes, its history and culture, and our people. The Scotland fans are leading example of this. We'll continue to build on this interest through our marketing activity, which includes our most recent campaign targeting key cities in the west of Germany, which have strong visitor demand and connectivity to Scotland. While Scotland may now be out of the tournament, Visit Scotland hope to see Euro 2024 effect continue, with interest in Scotland transferring off pitch too. The National Tourism Organisation is currently running a series of adverts across 3 German cities, promoting Scotland as the perfect getaway for locals looking to substitute the football drama with dramatic scenery. The mobile digital adverts, which will run until the final on 14th July, are expected to be seen by up to 2 million people over the course of the tournament. And that was by Craig Williams. The Herald on the 25th of June, and the news section. NHS, growth of two-tier healthcare system beyond question, by Helen McCardle. The leader of the BMA in Scotland is warning that the growth of a two-tier healthcare is beyond question, as representatives of the trade union from across the UK gather in Belfast Dr. Ian Kennedy, a GP and chair of the BMA Scottish Council, will tell delegates attending its annual conference that the NHS is in the grip of a perma-crisis, with winter-style pressures continuing 365 days a year. Dr. Kennedy will also warn that Scotland is sleepwalking into losing an NHS that is free at the point of use. It comes little over a week before the nation heads off to the polls to vote for the next UK government, with Labour seemingly on track to secure a substantial majority of seats. Health in the NHS is devolved, meaning that whichever party ends up in Downing Street will be responsible solely for the running of the NHS in England. However, healthcare policy and funding have been repeatedly raised during the campaign, including in Scotland, given that spending decisions taken at Westminster affect the amount of money available to spend on public services north of the border. The SNP, currently in power at Holyrood, is pushing for the next UK government to increase health spending by £16 billion a year, equivalent to an extra £1.6 billion for Scotland through Barnett's consequentials. UK-wide A&E performance and cancer waiting times have worsened significantly over the past 5 years, and the number of people waiting for planned operations has reached a record high. The GP workforce has declined, and in many areas of the country, patients are unable to register with an NHS dentist and have been left with no option but to pay for private treatment instead. In Scotland, the number of private GP surgeries has more than tripled since the pandemic as people struggle to get timely appointments with a family doctor, and there are around 7,000 patients who have been waiting over 2 years for an inpatient or day case procedure on the NHS compared to 300 in England, where eradicating very long waits was prioritised. The number of patients in Scotland self-funding their own treatment in private hospitals rose by 84% between 2019 and 2023. Addressing the BMA's annual representative meeting, ARM, in Belfast later today, Dr. Kennedy will warn that Scotland's NHS is in a state of permanent crisis, noting that more than 58,000 patients have waited more than 12 hours in the Scottish A&E department since he last addressed the conference in April last year, a 25-fold increase compared to 5 years ago. Dr. Kennedy will add this massive deterioration in performance is completely out with the control of our doctors who work tirelessly in traumatic circumstances. And these figures are a warning light that the whole health and social care system is not coping with the demand. Long waits are forcing those who can afford it to go private. The two-tier health service in Scotland is now beyond question. If you can stump up the cash, then you can get the care you need. But we all value an NHS free at the point of use. Yet Scotland is sleepwalking into sacrificing this principle, threatening the very existence of the National Health Service as we know it. Neil Gray, who was appointed as Health Secretary in May, replacing Michael Matheson, has said he is open to ideas on how to improve the health service and has committed the Scottish Government to a national conversation on the future of NHS and social care services. However, Dr. Kennedy says a plan for direct engagement with the public and stakeholders lacks both clarity and urgency. Dr. Sanjesh Galpane, a GP and Scottish Conservative Shadow Health Secretary, said the double whammy of the SNP's dire workforce planning and the failure of Humza Yousaf's flimsy recovery plan has left staff stretched to the breaking point, and it is patients who are paying the price. With the NHS's peak winter period well behind us, we should be seeing drastic improvements. But under the SNP, our health service faces winter pressures all year round. My colleagues in the BMA have been very clear that unless drastic action is taken, then the existence of the NHS as we know it is under threat. Scottish Labour Health spokeswoman Jackie Bally said Dr. Ian Kennedy and the BMA couldn't be any clearer about the perilous state of our NHS. Waiting lists are growing, staff are outstretched, and patients are being forced to consider private treatment, but the SNP insists there is no crisis. Our NHS doesn't need to be protected by John Swinney and the SNP, it needs to be rescued from them. Health Secretary Neil Gray said the principles of a health service free at point of need are sacrosanct. I've been clear, reform to how health services operate has never been more urgent, and our vision for transformation focuses on early prevention and intervention and improving population health. We greatly value our health workforce and want to hear from them, including BMA Scotland, on how to best reform services. We will collect views through a series of direct engagements with staff and key stakeholders over the next year. We are making progress in clearing the backing of long waits for planned care and continue to work closely with boards to improve A&E performance. And that was by Helen Mercado.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2024, from the business section. Family sells historic hotel to new Scottish market player. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A historic Scottish hotel has been sold to an English firm making its first entry into the market north of the border. The 33-bedroom hotel with spa, indoor swimming pool and 2 function suites was sold in an off-market deal through the specialist hotels team at Colliers. Balgeddy House Hotel in Fife was sold by Solly Hotels to Smar Hotels and Leisure Limited. It is the firm's latest deal for the family-owned hotel group after handling the King's Manor Hotel in Edinburgh last month. The hotel on the outskirts of Glenrothes last changed hands in 2003. The addition of the Nairn Function Suite, with a 220 capacity, along with the views of the Lomond Hills from its 4 acres of grounds, cemented the hotel's reputation as a popular venue for weddings and events. The hotel, which has been trading under the Best Western brand, is also popular with business guests due to the number of corporations located nearby, as well as strong demand for its spa and leisure facilities at the weekend. Historic Environment Scotland said that the 1936 Balgeddy House was built as a birthday gift for a member of the Nairn family and commissioned by Major Sir Robert Spencer Nairn, and is reported to have wooden flooring obtained from a decommissioned minesweeper. The sale leaves Solly Hotels with its final hotel, the popular Pitbochley House Hotel in Dunfermline, which is also now available for expressions of interest through Colliers. Sam Sarani, who also owns the Manor Hotel in Exmouth, said, "This is a very exciting time for us stepping into the Scottish market. Balgeddy House Hotel is already a strong business with lots of loyal customers using the venue's facilities regularly. We're looking forward to seeing how we can enhance the offering for our customers, creating a wonderful experience in the impressive Scottish location." Julian Troop of Colliers handled the sale. He said, "We're pleased to have managed the confidential sale of another outstanding Scottish hotel asset. The Balgeddy generated competing bids from buyers based in Scotland and further afield, as it's a very well-known hotel and hospitality business in the region. It is an excellent purchase for Smar Hotels and Leisure Limited in their first venture into Scotland." This is Collier's 29th UK hotel transaction this year, which is a 38% improvement on last year, highlighting that buyer confidence is returning on the back of improving economic indicators. Edinburgh-headquartered legal firm Lindsay's advised Solly Hotels on both the Balgeddy House and King's Manor transactions. Kenny Gray, partner in the commercial property team at Lindsay's, said, "Solly Hotels have a great business and we're very pleased to be working alongside them. The sale of Balgeddy House and the interest in it highlights very real demand from private and corporate investors keen to extend their reach into Scotland's independent hotel market. Thornton solicitors acted for Smar Hotels and Leisure Limited in the legal process." That article was by Brian Donnelly. This is from the Herald Scotland of Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2024, from the business section. Maxi Caledonian hits £100 million turnover as Succession revealed. This article is by Scott Wright. Maxi Caledonian has reported turnover in excess of £100 million for the first time, as its long-standing owner revealed details of succession planning at the haulage and construction group. The Irvine-based company, which is more than 50 years old, reported a rise in profits and turnover during increasingly difficult trading conditions, new accounts reveal. The accounts, which are expected to be lodged at Companies House this week, were revealed as Jerry Atkinson confirmed details of his semi-retirement. Mr. Atkinson's son Richard has been appointed deputy chairman of all the group's companies and has taken responsibility for Maxi's haulage division, as well as IT, insurance matters and logistics contracts agreements. However, Mr. Atkinson, who has owned the business for more than 40 years and turned 80 in February, declared he has no plans to retire. Maxi, which includes businesses involved in haulage, construction and warehousing, increased pre-tax profits to £4.44 million from £4.35 million for the year ended September 30th, 2023, as turnover was hiked to £101.8 million from £89.2 million. The company's dominant haulage division, which serves supermarkets and commercial vehicle parts suppliers, increased turnover to £80.9 million from £75.5 million, although its pre-tax profits dropped to £2.7 million from £3.6 million. That came amid challenging conditions which saw a number of firms go out of business. Maxi Construction, meanwhile, reported a satisfactory pre-tax profit of £2 million, up from £847,785, as turnover surged to £20.7 million from £13.4 million. We are pleased to report that all group companies had a successful year's trading, successfully managing increasingly difficult trading conditions, state the directors of Max Caledonian in the accounts. Maxi Construction Limited's turnover grew significantly up to normal levels and results remain very satisfactory. Maxi Haulage Limited's turnover grew significantly and profits remain satisfactory in a market which now has more supply than demand. Unfortunately, we have not yet been able to fully recover inflationary increases to costs, and this continues into the following period. Overall group turnover increased from £89 million to over £100 million, and pre-tax profits were £4.4 million. We maintain a very strong balance sheet, and our financial strength greatly aids the confidence customers and potential customers have in us. Mr. Atkinson has been with Maxi since 1976 and has owned the company since buying out its other shareholders in 1983. While he has reduced his working commitments, he told the Herald that he remains closely involved. He said he would reduce his operational involvement, but I don't intend retiring, noting, "I'll still keep my finger on the pulse. Richard has been with us for many, many years, since he left university, really. He has been through the training and he knows the business inside out. I am 80 now and have to cover for me not being here, and I have a succession plan." Commenting on trading, Mr. Atkinson said there had been a deterioration in the haulage industry. "These things happen, they come and they go," he said. "At the moment, you have a huge amount of insolvencies, probably because of COVID, and also the taxman looking for his money now, which he wasn't before." He added that the industry has also gone from driver shortage to driver excesses. Asked to elaborate on the market conditions facing hauliers, Mr. Atkinson said, "Obviously, from a profit point of view, costs are the problem. You cannot pass those costs on by increasing your prices. We have already improved our efficiency as much as we can. We keep trying, we keep finding ways to cut costs, but at the end of the day you have got to put prices up, and that is difficult just now. He added, it is difficult to see where the market is going with the general election coming. We just don't know. Asked if the company would consider acquisitions, Mr. Atkinson said, yes, we would look at it. My son Richard reckons he gets about one opportunity a day from people looking to sell businesses just now. We are not actively pursuing it, but like all commercial situations, if the right opportunity came along, we would take advantage of it. But I'm not pursuing it. There are a lot of companies on the market just now. Obviously, you are buying someone else's problems. Commenting on the firm's construction division, Mr. Atkinson said, we are doing very nicely. We have maintained a good business and continue to do so. We are an economical and high-quality construction company and regularly get congratulated on the quality of our project. I think that helps a lot. The accounts show Maxi Caledonian employed an average of 375 staff during the year, up from 350. That article was by Scott Wright.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.